Peace, family, and welcome to this edition of the Drapetomaniac Podcast. This is Ayapo Yapa, the HDIC, that is, the head Drapetomaniac in charge, and we're here to have conversations on how to get off this plantation. If one's foundational premise is erroneous, then everything that comes from that premise will be equally erroneous, if not more so. America has been through social movement after social movement, protest after protest, march after march, uprising after uprising, and riot after riot. We're hearing politicians talk, and I guarantee you it's only talk and will remain only talk.
Excuse me, I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to make sure that you listeners are listening to the Drapetomaniac Podcast on doayamedia.com. You are, right?
About reparations and quote-unquote social justice. And we congratulate ourselves on the fact that some of us have brought that conversation to the forefront. I would ask this very simple question. Have there not been decades of marches, protests, and other forms of social unrest? Would these things even be part of the conversation, even in the most superficial of ways, as I assure you they are right now? Probably not. Which, if you deeply think about it, tells you everything you need to know. But the fact that they're talking about such things is a head fake. Do you really think that they're discussing these issues because we've quote-unquote raised awareness? Let me clue you in on something. There's a fundamental problem with the entire narrative of those in positions of power and leadership if you take the time to examine it. Are they trying to tell us that they're just now acting because they finally see us and hear us? Are they saying that for the past over 400 years, they have not seen or heard us? They did not notice that we were being enslaved, forced to work for nothing, treated as animals, raped, brutalized, terrorized? They did not see or hear us when we were being hunted, lynched, and murdered in the most brutal of ways, even our children? They did not see or hear us while we were being marginalized, denied rights, and were not even allowed to drink at the same water fountains or take a piss in the same bathrooms. They did not see or hear us when we were being wholesale thrown into prisons and the keys being thrown away for little or nothing. That is, those of us who were fortunate enough to make it to court and not just be executed on the street, again, for little or nothing, while given a lower status and worth in this country than they give to most of their dogs, and are still treated as such? I have a question. How in the fuck did we convince ourselves that they didn't and don't see all of this, and were not 100% aware of everything they were doing to us and what was and continues to happen to us for centuries? They did know, and they do know. They just don't care. They didn't need to be made aware of anything. They already knew and always have known. We, referring to our people, are not being addressed in any real or substantive ways. And when we're spoken to, we're talked down to, and we're talked to as if we're unruly children who need to be placated so that we can be quiet and be good. If one's foundational premise is erroneous, then everything that comes from that premise will be equally erroneous, if not more so. Error. We believe we live in a democracy, or more accurately, a representative republic. If we did, things like voting actually would mean something. Truth. We presently live in either a plutocracy ruled by oligarchs or an oligarchy ruled by plutocrats. I must confess, I'm still researching which it actually is, because they're both basically the same thing with subtle differences. But this is definitely not a democracy or a representative republic. Not anymore. if it ever was. The long and short of it is that in plutocracies and oligarchies, the rich and the corporations run the government, and the average citizens, and even, and this is the important part, mass-based interest groups have little or no influence upon it. Little or no influence upon it. Even mass-based interest groups. Study the data. That is the present situation, and that is not my opinion. That is a cold, hard, sickening fact. When it comes to U.S. policy, it is well documented that no matter what popular opinions or the vote or mass outcry is, whatever corporate donors, banks, and other entities with deep pockets wants to see happen is what happens. And that is just how it is. Research it. That's not my opinion. That is a fact. It doesn't matter what the majority of people want. It doesn't matter what the majority of people vote for. Special interest groups with deep pockets are the ones who guide policy. And that is just a hard truth that once you come to grips with it, that will be your first step out of this mess. And when I say out of this mess, I don't mean reforming the government. I mean your willingness to walk away from it, because you will finally realize that it's all a sham. During this present crisis in the U.S., the top 10% got wealthier by millions. The top 1% got wealthier by billions with a B. And those who are already struggling at the bottom are denied health care, permanently losing jobs, or closing the doors if they own small businesses, and lining up in food lines and being thrown out of their homes, and lost what little wealth they may have had. For our people as a demographic, it's a total disaster. And what was the response from the government? To give the wealthy who don't need it trillions of dollars with a T, and to bail out corporations and banks that don't need the bailing out. And then, as they see the common people crying out for help and losing everything, including their lives, they go on vacation. Picture in your mind thousands of people in an ocean drowning. Some are going down for the third time, and you have 2 lifeguards who have superpowers and the ability to save everyone. You're out there in the shark-infested ocean with this mass of other people drowning and screaming, begging and demanding that these lifeguards, who they helped to get their jobs so they could be there for this kind of a crisis, to come out and do their job, which is to save you and the others. But, unbeknown to you, there's a couple on the beach who've been paying the lifeguards far more than the paltry salary you've been giving them, and they do so in order for the lifeguards to be at their beck and call. So as the couple sits on the beach, sipping Mai Tais and watching all the people drowning, like it's a show, they tell their bought and paid for lackeys that they need their drinks freshened, and that they would like a speedboat brought close to the shore so that they can be escorted to their yacht, which both lifeguards do with all haste over the screams of the thousands out in the ocean. Now, some of the bodies are starting to float on the water. They just couldn't hold out. So just to look like they're sort of doing something, the lifeguards haphazardly throw out like 10 life preservers to the thousands of people drowning. They then continue to help the couple who owns them to get onto the speedboat, and then they drive them out to their yacht and make sure that they're safely aboard. And then they go back to shore, speeding past the drowning people and pushing them further out into the ocean in their wake. Once the 2 lifeguards are safely back on shore, they look out over the ocean and see the dead bodies as well as the drowning and screaming people who are still struggling, and they have a heated discussion between them for about an hour about whether to throw them another couple life preservers or not. And then they're not able to come to an agreement. So they look at their watches and they say, hey, it's quitting time. And since we're not able to get anywhere on this discussion and it's Friday, we need to just go home for the weekend and relax with our families and come back Monday and discuss it some more. So, with these masses of people out there drowning, they turn and they leave and they jump into their chauffeur-driven cars and head home to their mansions, while you and everyone else out there struggle against the current that's pulling you further and further into the unforgiving shark-infested ocean as you flail around with the last ounce of strength you have. You look around at the growing number of bloated corpses that you're fairly sure one of them will soon be you. In the meantime, the lifeguards you put into their jobs are at home with their families, eating, drinking, laughing, making love, doing whatever. And when they go to sleep at night, trust and believe, they wake up in the same position in which they went to sleep. In other words, they don't turn over once. They sleep like babies. They sleep the sleep of the righteous. You don't want to believe that's how it is, but that's how it is. To go with that, I want to help you out with something. I often hear commentators say that these politicians are quote-unquote out of touch with the struggles of the average American, the average people, and that's why they don't do anything to actually help. And I'm sure that that's what most of us quote-unquote regular people believe. Commentators say that they live in a bubble that makes it so that they can't see beyond their own elitist group. Another fundamental premise that is an error. The truth, they see you, they hear you, they know you're there, they know it. They just don't care. And that's why it's a useless exercise to waste your time and energy trying to appeal to them on any level. If someone is not aware that they're doing something, then yes, there is hope that that behavior can be changed if it's brought to their attention. However, if a person is well aware of what they are doing, you telling them over and over and over isn't going to make them more aware of it. They already freaking know. If I'm stepping on your foot and I don't know that I'm stepping on your foot, you telling me that I'm doing it and asking me to stop may very well stop me from doing it. If I'm stepping on your foot and not only know that I'm doing it, but I'm doing it on purpose, you telling me I'm doing it or demanding that I stop isn't going to make me stop. I'm doing it on purpose. If anything, all you're doing is confirming to me that I'm being successful in what I'm seeking to do to you. It won't make me stop. That is the hard pill for many people to swallow. We want to believe that these entities have some faint spark of humanity within them. But as with Leopold, Hitler, all the way down to Gacy and the BTK, we are dealing with sociopaths who are well aware of the pain, terror, and misery that they're causing. They just don't give a damn. And I'm going to keep saying this every chance I get. We are dealing with a system that's designed for our oppression and ruled by those who hate us. And they are letting their own people, the people to whom they allow privilege, to drown. What on earth makes you think they could be made to accommodate us, who they hate, when they won't even do anything for their own people? I'm mystified by that mindset within some of our people. Mystified. We need to cut our losses and separate and take control of our own destinies, both individually and as a people, and extricate ourselves from this rigged system with its bought and paid for soulless leadership. I'm going to stop here because as I started working on this podcast, I realized I have a lot more to say about this, and there is a lot more to be said. And in the interest of keeping this not so long, I'll pick this up from here next week. And so, Thank you for listening, as always, to the Drapetomaniac podcast. This is Ayapo Yapo, the HDIC, that is, the head Drapetomaniac in charge, wishing you peace and blessings, sanity and safety, until next week at this same time. Until then, I'll see you on the run.
And thank you again for listening to the Drapetomaniac podcast. Tune in next week at doiamedia.com. DOEAIAMEDIA.com. And again, we'll catch you on the run. Peace.